Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the co-feature at Oaklawn Park on Saturdays. The Grade 3 Whitmore Stakes. We're going 3/4 of a mile. $200,000 is the purse, and we have a competitive field. Let's take a peek right now at some of these nice older sprinters. You've got several horses in this race with legitimate credentials, Mike. A horse with perhaps the most upside of any of these is the number 9 Cogburn, who did some good things last year as a 3-year-old for Steve Asmussen. As a matter of fact, he's less than a length away from bringing a 5-race winning streak into this field.
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at him, Dan. He's second off the layoff here. Maybe he just sort of needed that first start back. He wound up winning last time over this track. You know, I didn't think it was necessarily the most impressive win in the world, but he got the job done, and maybe he could take a step forward here. That's a fair enough way to look at him.
There should be some pace on in this race. Cogburn likes to be up close. Timeform US will note that he's going to make the lead in here, but note the red bar. They're expecting a fast pace that might aid closers. Pirate Rick has shown a lot of speed. Edge to edge, he's probably going to have to run a little bit faster than the fractions of some of his most recent races, but this is his best running style. There might be a hot pace, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the late runners eating him up late.
Yeah, I do feel like this pace is supposed to be, pretty competitive early. And there are several horses in here who do their best running, sort of up there on the lead. And several of those horses also come into this race in really good form. So I don't see why they'd be taking their speed away from him in here.
Now, Mr. Lucas often has a reputation for throwing horses into graded stakes races and taking shots. Well, he's taken his time with the number 1 Spankster. This will be Spankster's stakes debut in his 13th lifetime start. He might be trying it at the right time. Let's watch his most recent start at this Oaklawn meet over a sloppy track. It's a second level allowance. He got a good closer's trip and a good pace setup, but I do like the way he fired on home.
Yeah, I like the way he finishes in here. You're right. This race sets up for him. The horses that are, sort of still on the lead now have contested the pace most of the way. They're very tired, and Spankster is going to come and close them down late off of a really good trip. But it's a good performance, Dan, and it comes off the heels of what I think is an even better effort 2 starts back over this track where he just failed to get to Cogburn. We're going to see the replay of that race a little bit later, but this horse ran really well in that spot. 3 of his last 4 dirt sprints, Dan, on wet tracks. I think he's better over fast dirt. Maybe he gets it in this race.
It looks like he's lurking under the radar, and he's got to be a playable price as he steps up into the graded stakes ranks for the first time. The 2 is Tejano Twist, and if you're looking for maybe a sort of pace play in here, a horse that might take advantage of the race flow, it's Tejano Twist, who brought a 3-race win streak into this race, the King Cotton last time out, and he just happened to catch a slow-paced race won by one of the better sprinters in the country, Gunite, who would come back to run second in the Riyadh Dirt Sprint. But Tejano Twist shows a lot of try in here, Mike, to get second, and he might get a better setup over a fast track this time around.
It's a good performance from him in this race. The pace wasn't that fast, and at the end of the day, Dan, Gunite's just too good for him in here, but he's clearly second best. That was a good performance. His prior 3 wins were all good performances. We already saw the pace projector for this race, Dan, which is supposed to be fast. That only helps this horse, and it helps him more than it helps anybody else. His recent form is really, really tough to knock. He's supposed to be a handful in here.
The number 3 is miles ahead. He also comes out of the King Cotton. He was 3rd that day in his second start off of a short layoff. Maybe the sloppy track didn't agree with him. He's won half of his 22 lifetime starts on fast going. He is a graded stakes winner. He's done most of his best running down in South Florida, but he's pretty honest and is another stalker that would take advantage if the pace is high.
Yeah, can see a good trip coming for him. And he has run some races that will give him a real chance in here. He's also got the right running style for this race. I guess if you're going to take him out of the King Cotton over Tejano Twist, you're just going to have to use the wet track as the excuse, Dad, because this horse had a perfectly good trip in that race and was never a real factor despite getting up for 3rd at the end. He certainly didn't run as well as Tejano Twist did. So we'll see if he can sort of turn the tables on that horse in this race. Some of his figures that he's earned in the past suggest that he can do that.
Speaking of figures, the number 4 Edge to Edge comes into this race off 2 triple-digit buyer victories, including this start last time out against Allowance Company. But the question I have for you, Mike, is he dressed up a little bit coming into this race? This start that we're seeing right now, a 4-horse field, he controlled it from the start, and the race prior, he also was able to make a pretty easy lead. He's going to have to go faster in the early portion if he's to duplicate front-running tactics.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I would look at him. Obviously, it all comes down to price with this horse. If he sort of gets overlooked because people are, sort of dismissing his last 2 wins, maybe he's the kind of horse that you want to stay positive on because he has looked really good winning both of those races in fast time. I'm inclined not to really like him off of that most recent start. He just had all the best of it there and sprinted on home. This race will be run totally differently than that one was, but he still looked good winning his last 2 starts. It's all about price.
The number 5 is Empire of Gold. He's an honest horse. He's hit the board in his last 5 starts, but I'm really interested in your opinion of this race. An allowance at Sam Houston last time out. Now he's 3-5. He's also getting caught up in a pace duel with another horse. The fractions were hot. The other horse, as you see, is backing up tired pretty badly. He wins the battle, but how does he lose the race?
Yeah, that's sort of the kind of the way that I'm looking at it, Dan. I get that if you just sort of look at this, the running line on paper, you'll see that he contested the pace. The winner comes from last and runs him down at the end, and this horse just had a big excuse. I don't look at the race that way. I don't know how he lost that race. And even though that other horse was up on the pace with him in there, they weren't flying up there. That pace wasn't that fast. This horse looked home free past the 16th pole, and he just got run down without excuse, I thought.
And this is a much tougher spot. The horses coming out of that race have yet to really acquit themselves very well. Baytown Bear is up next, the number 6. And we've talked about horses in this race that might do better on fast going. Baytown Bear might like a wet track. Now, his last running line in over a sloppy track wasn't very good, but he didn't have the best trip in that race. 2 back, he won at Mountaineer by the length of the stretch. I doubt he was beating much.
Yeah, me either. And it just doesn't feel like when he's perfectly consistent and he's a really honest racehorse, Dan. And maybe he even gets a really good trip in this race. But it's hard to say that if he shows up and runs his best race and then 4 or 5 of the other horses in here do the same, hard to say that Baytown Bear is going to be able to beat them.
I'm a huge fan of the number 7, Flash of Mischief. He's a horse with good tactical speed. He has run some very fast races in the past. They took a shot with him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last fall. He bounced back with a win at Oaklawn over a wet track, and then he just didn't really fire his best shot against Gunite last time out in that replay we showed with Tejano Twist. He has the right running style for this race. Solid outside post, good tactical speed, and he has back races.
Yeah, that's true. I struggled with trying to decide what to do with him, Dan. I don't know how much credit you're supposed to give him for the wet track last time. He seems like he handles wet tracks. And at the end of the day, he just really wasn't very good in the King Cotton last time. Now, they did, rate him pretty strongly early in that race. I thought they really weren't interested in going forward in that race. And maybe he just didn't really like being taken a hold of. I don't know. I really tried to make excuses for him so I could throw him in there because on his best day, he's probably got a race that makes him really, really competitive in here.
Was the number 8 Pirate Rick exposed in his last 3 races? He went into the toboggan 3 starts back off of a 4-race winning streak and a giant buyer speed figure. And in those 3 graded stakes races, maybe 2 of them at 7 furlongs, a distance a little far for him. And last time out in the Tom Fool, he caught a wet track, but he didn't run back to those allowance races.
Yeah, I don't want to totally dismiss him in here, Dan, because I do think his good race makes him tough. I feel like he's tailing off. I don't necessarily feel like it's the graded races he's been running in that have been too tough for him. I just kind of feel like he's tailing off. He put that 4-race winning streak together. He was super sharp in winning all those races, and he hasn't been nearly as good in the last 3.
And he's shipping down from New York in only 2 weeks, but he is getting Lasix again, and his good races came with Lasix. Maybe that will wake him up a bit. He's going to be part of this likely solid pace, along with the number 9 Cogburn. I was a little disappointed when Cogburn was beaten in the Chick Lang 2 starts back, but that race preceded a very lengthy layoff that was Preakness weekend, and he came back with this performance. Asmussen found a great spot for his 4-year-old debut, a 3-life allowance race. Ricardo Santana kept him off the rail where he set a pressured pace, and this horse is getting tired at the end, but he deserved to get tired for his first start since May.
Yeah, that's fair enough. He runs fine in here. I thought overall his trip was good. He takes over. He's getting pretty desperate at the end of this race, but he will hold on. That Spankster, the 4, who's starting to make up ground way too late there. I thought he ran well. We'll see, Dan. The pace doesn't seem like it really does this horse any favors. It's supposed to be fast, and I personally don't think he's fast enough to make the lead in this race. And I guess I wasn't as high on him as a 3-year-old as you were. I know it's only 3 starts. I didn't like his Bachelor. I thought that was a really bad loss over this track. I didn't like him getting beaten the Chick Lang either. I know he's lightly raced. I'm not that much of a fan.
Morello completes the field, and he began his career like he could be any kind. He won his first 3 starts, including the Grade 3 Gotham. He was briefly on the Kentucky Derby Trail. Then they briefly tried to turn him back in distance, and then he disappeared. The problem with Morello is Morello. He doesn't break well from the gate, and that's been a problem even when he was going good at the start of his career. If he misses the break here, Mike, he could be 10, 12 lengths out of it, and even with the right pace scenario, it just might be too much to do.
Yeah, the gate issues just haven't gotten better over time. That's a real issue for this horse. To me, the bigger issue is just his last race. I mean, he didn't break right in there. It was a 4-horse field, edge to edge, wired him. This horse was terrible in there. He sat right on the rail behind the winner to the top of the stretch and came up completely empty.
How wide open is this race? Let's take a look at our top selections for the Grade 3 Whitmore. We're all over the place in here. Mike's going with some upside and a horse that can rally from off of the pace. That Spankster, I think you're going to get the right price. What would you take? Would you take 8-1 or would you need more?
No, I would take 8-1 on him in this race. I want prices in here, Dan, and I do feel like he's starting to get better, and especially since they've been a little more patient with him. His last 2 starts from off the pace and letting him run through the stretch, that wasn't always his running style. I think he's better this way. This race should set up for him. I think the 2 Tejano Twist is the horse to beat. He's supposed to have a setup in here. I like the 2 inside horses.
I want to use Tejano Twist in any kind of multiple race wager because he is in such good form right now and he might get the setup. I want to give Pirate Rick one last chance with Lasix, but I would need 6-1 and I'm not sure I'm going to get it. 1-2-3-7 for Mike, 8-4-9-2 for me. It's the Grade 3 Whitmore, one of 2 nice graded races at Oaklawn Park on Saturday. Best of luck.